Yeah.
Oh, yes, indeed. We have the NARD president with us here in our studios in Abuja, Dr. Ilawa. Okay. Thank you so much for helping me out then.
Good morning,
Dr. Ilawa Okwaesi is here with us in the studios.
Good morning, Maokba.
Good morning, Doc. It's good to see you. You were hoping at some point that this strike will be the strike that will end all strikes.
Yes.
Would you say that this strike has achieved that particular purpose?
Well, good morning, Nigerians. I'll go back to the basis. We had some demands in our communique to the federal government, and I'll break all down. For the demands on the House Officers' payment, we've achieved at least about 75% to 80%. Some of the House Officers have been paid, although we had some irregularities with the payments, starting from those that had multiple payments, those that had problems with their folio number, those that their bank account did not tally with them. The minister and the Honorable Gbajamila, through Dr. Tanko Sununu, set up a committee of 5 members, with whom our financial secretary, Dr. Okeke, was among them, and they worked throughout the weekend. As it stands, about 239 will receive their salary payment this morning.
239 of your members?
We received from this morning, because they worked with the IPs and the MDCN. Then the other ones will get theirs from tomorrow and next for the failed ones. For the members on GiftMix, we're able to achieve for them a migration to the IPs platform, which is expected to end and to be completed by April ending. And also that their salaries have been investigated, and payment of them will start from next tomorrow. That's what we achieved for those on GiftMix platform. For the members on for the Medical Resident Training Fund, we had about 558 that were paid erroneously. And I need to make some corrections, because from the House of Rep, they said about 308 members had monies. They were erroneously paid, and we have since sought a bank account since 20th of December for them to make refunds, and they are willing to all make refunds. But however, about 1,003 members were not paid, and those the House of Rep and House of Rep under the supervision of Femi Gbajamila and Tanko Sununu, and also with Dr. Chris Ngige, of Minister of Labour, have asked that the money be put into a supplementary budget that will be submitted to the ministry for payment to be made onwards. And also the National Postgraduate College, who's in charge as a regulatory body for them, have been told to submit the list for the 2021 Medical Resident Training Fund to the Ministry of Health and copy the IP's office for onward payment. So those are one of the gains, some of the gains we have gained with the strike.
So in other words, you have gained something significant.
We have gained something significant.
But it's still not enough to end all strikes.
It may not be enough to end off strike. Because as it speaks, there's a meeting that is going to hold concerning the 5,000 Naira hazard allowance today, and with other health workers on Wednesday. That is one aspect that is still floating. And doctors don't just decide that, it involves every other person. Even though we clamored that every health worker deserves to have the hazard allowance reviewed. So that we still have to go for, and we hope that the government will be sincere and be honorable to acknowledge the MOA signed. For those that members were lost to the COVID-19, 17 members were lost. We have been able to reach an agreement that the doctors involved and the health workers involved should be able to make claims to the so that they can benefit from the insurance, group insurance. So as it stands, the chief medical directors were directed to take the forms to the hospitals, give the desk officers, and we with our members and other health workers should go and fill the forms and send it back to the Ministry of Health, and there they'll be able to benefit from the insurance, death and service insurance.
So all of this came as a result of the strike which you embarked upon?
Yes.
Do you think that otherwise you would have been listened to if you did not embark on a strike?
I don't think so. Because as it stands, for the insurance, it has been there for over 9 months. Some as much as 5 years ago. Because we're not just talking about COVID-19. There's Lassa fever, there's HIV. There are other people that have had some complications due to other illness and the hazards they face. And there have been insurance companies, not even now. If we didn't go on this strike, we will not be able to have achieved this. If we didn't go on this strike, we will not be able to achieve the review of the hazard allowance, proposed review of hazard allowance. If we didn't go on this strike, we won't be able to tell us that we should be able to go and make a supplementary budget for those that have not been paid the Medical Resident Training Fund. If not for this strike, the 2021 would not be factored in for payment to residents.
So I'm wondering, did you raise this particular issue? For a lot of Nigerians, this is the biggest issue. The fact that you have to embark on a strike to get grievances, legitimate grievances, heard. That, for a lot of Nigerians, is the biggest issue, because the strike of doctors comes at a huge cost for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the main problem I find in the system is people that are not honorable, people that do not want to really work. They sit down in their offices, just stay there. You negotiate with them and come out to some memorandum of understandings or MOU or MOA, and they do not honor it. We are calling off the strike now, but most of our members are disappointed with the terms of why are we not extending it. We are calling it off because we want to be seen as a responsible organization. We want to be seen as being patriotic to Nigerians. We want to be seen that we still care for our patients and for Nigerians generally. All we have tried to achieve in this strike that lasted for 10 days is to make Nigerians, government, to be more responsible, to take the health of Nigerians, to not take it for granted. And we have been able to throw more light on them, thankfully, because of your station.
Is it the health of Nigerians now, the welfare of doctors?
The health of Nigerians also matters. Because if you are able to tell them that you can get the best facilities in Nigeria, you can have functional places like functional MRIs, CT scan.
That's not why you went on strike. You didn't go on strike because of the health of Nigeria.
If you go back to...
You went on strike because of the welfare of your members.
It's part of it. But if you check the mottos and the reasons of last year, part of the reasons we went on strike were the infrastructural decay that have been in the system. We told you then that you can not go to any hospital, most hospitals in Nigeria, where you can see functional basic equipment that are supposed to be there, which was part of the mottos, which is, I think, number 12 of our mottos in our communique. But you know that also if you are hungry, it leads you to some things that you do not expect. Most of the house officers and most of the resident members on GIFMIX are actually not happy with me now for calling off the strike. But if you can get a commitment for payments to be made in the next few days, and you weigh the balance of either continuing the strike or trying to protect your own members and also take Nigerians into considerations, you have to balance it to get the best outcome.
Indeed, that's why I'm trying to say that at the end of the day, the bottom line, the biggest issue, even if you say yes, the part of it is the health of Nigerians, by extension, yes, if our doctors are not catered for, I mean, automatically it will affect their own health because they are Nigerians as well, and it will also affect the health of their patients, because an unhappy doctor, nobody likes to meet an unhappy doctor.
Yes, that's why we went to, I spoke to you earlier on the oath. I told that the oath is broken down into 4 parts. The first part is our responsibility to the patient generally. Second part is the responsibility to the society. Third part is the responsibility to our colleagues. And the fourth part is the responsibility to ourselves. So going by the oath,
which you're always told to remember every time you go on strike.
So if the fourth part, the responsibility for ourselves, is met, that means the first and second part, which is the responsibility to the patients and to the society, That is where the balance comes in. If we're able to get members to be paid their salaries, means it's part of the welfare. If we're able to give members a good hazard allowance package, it's a good it's for our own welfare. If we are able to achieve the death insurance benefits to those who have lost to their loved ones, that is our own welfare. That gives us a reason why we want to stay in our country. Those are ways you are able to prevent the brainstorm that is happening in the health sector. So welfare of our members is also very important.
Indeed, and I don't think anyone would debate that. I mean, the only reason, the only worry is that the underlying issue of you having to go on strike to get what it is that legitimately yours. Did you bring up this issue, and how was it responded to?
I will actually at this time want to thank the Honorable Speaker of the House, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, and the Committee Chairman on Health, Dr. Tanko Sununu. They have gone a long way to help us to have faith in the system. He was instrumental to our being paid the Medical Research and Training Fund of 2020. And it's also been instrumental to helping us to achieve for those that have not been paid. So we have been given a leap of faith to believe in the system, and we hope and pray that the system don't fail us. But if it fails us, we don't have a choice but to call a meeting in the next 4 weeks, which is the timeline we give for this strike action that was suspended. And we may not hopefully go on strike. But if these demands are not met in 4 weeks' time, I think it will go back to us going on an indefinite strike again.
Well, we sincerely hope that doesn't happen.
I hope so too.
I mean, because you talked about people hoping to be paid this morning, as soon as this morning, yes, and as soon as tomorrow, and I think some other people will be attended to on Wednesday as well.
Wednesday, those on GIFMIX.
Yeah, so we're hoping that all of these commitments that have been made and secured, will be lived up to. And I want to believe that the Minister for Health will be one of the biggest champions of the causes that you people are already on as well. But moving on now, what more? I mean, assuming the hazard allowance, which you're also hoping to negotiate, I think in the course of this week as well.
Today, Monday and Wednesday.
What are you demanding for hazard allowance? What do you want it to be reviewed up from? Because some people will say it's in the nature of your job that you always come across hazards. It's just the way medicine is evolving these days. Look at COVID-19. No one thought this was going to happen, for instance. And really nothing will be enough to compensate you for the hazards which you will come across. What would you say to that?
I'll give you some certain examples. We have 2 of our colleagues now that have end-stage renal failure. And the least amount of money for them to have a renal transplant ranges from about 5 million to 10 million. That means with our basic salary of less than 3 million naira every year, we have to need people to help donate for them to have treatment and to have a chance to survive. I'll give you another example. There's a colleague of ours recently, some few days back, had a road traffic accident, and she may need to have a total knee replacement and need to have surgery, and she's not able to actually afford the surgery because first she has not even been paid and cannot hardly even feed. So going back to it now, what we have asked for is just at least 50% of the basic allowance, which yields between maybe 50 to 100.
No, the issues you have raised now are 2 different issues. You've talked about health issues that your colleagues have. I mean,
yes,
and people will tell you that this can happen in any sector. But we're talking about something that could come up as a result of something you do on your job.
I'm going there.
On a daily basis.
I'm going there.
What you've raised, some people will say, well, we'll have to do with health insurance, more or less.
For you to have renal failure, it depends on what you're exposed to. 1, you can be exposed to drugs. 2, it can be complications of even COVID-19. it can be a complication of Lassa fever. In Lassa fever, it affects virtually every system of the body. And at a stage, it leads to renal failure, which is part of an hazard you can get from being exposed to Lassa fever.
Unless it's proven that that's what
it has been proven. They are documented.
No, what I mean is, unless this particular situation is proven that indeed it was because this person came in touch with a Lassa fever patient, and that's why the person got... Do you understand what I'm trying to say? To be able to
fully
draw
aware.
a direct link between what happened to a doctor, you know, while on the course of his or her job, rather than maybe something that happened as a result of, you know, decisions.
Let me give you some examples. If you go to the COVID-19, as I said earlier, we had 17 patients, 1,824 members that were infected. And you also agree with me that we have cried and felt sad about the 17 people that died. Of the 1,824 that were infected, also had other complications. And if you go, you tend to search for the complications of COVID-19. It ranges also, can give you renal failure, can give you basic range of so many other things.
Indeed.
So those are the part of the hazards that we are made to face. And you have to tell us that if you are paid 5,000 naira that barely can treat malaria, and it now leads to maybe renal failure or kidney and other complications, what would that 5,000 naira do for you? It's a basic thing.
So do you think that, in your opinion, do you think that a hazard allowance is what will cut it? Or do you think that it should be something more holistic and more comprehensive, like a comprehensive health insurance plan for doctors?
Thank you.
Which do you think will work better?
A comprehensive health insurance will be much more important than the hazard allowance because it's actually factored into it. If you check the National Health Insurance Scheme that is being used in Nigeria for all health workers generally, you find out that they do not pay for major surgeries. They do not pay for things like good drugs, like Augmentin. You know that in different times when we fall ill, there are certain drugs we can actually use. They do not even pay for the immunizations, for those immunizations for our own children less than 5. So fine. But if you go abroad, in the US, in the United Kingdom, in Canada, you find out as part of a welfare package for all health workers there, is a functional insurance scheme. It's a scheme that can take care of a knee replacement when you get old. It's a scheme that can take care of cancer treatment when you get infected with cancer. Do
you think that, you know, maybe your agitation should then be, you know, revised to, instead of a hazard allowance, which some people would just say, oh, you're just looking for a stylish salary increment?
No, that's why it's part of the premium of the insurance, which I said earlier. Yeah. Because the premium insurance, the group insurance we said, also covers for all this. And it's part of what we are asking for.
Okay, let me flip this to Lagos now. I understand my colleagues have questions for you. Kaide.
Well, thank you, Mark. Dr. Kwaisi, when you said that some of your members, or at least people on GIFMIS, are not happy with you for calling off the strike, I just wanted to get that clear. I thought it was the NEC that decided that this strike be suspended. Was it you or the NEC? And if it was the NEC, didn't the NEC factor in everybody's emotions or everybody's agitation before saying, well, let's suspend this for the time being?
I think, let me make it clear now. The issue of the GIFMIS platform is a platform for payment for non-regular salaries. And at this extent, there's a ratio between clinical workers and non-clinical workers in the hospital environment. And the ratio is about 3 clinical workers to 1 non-clinical health worker. As it stands in most of the GIFMIS platform, it has been found out that the non-clinical workers are being made in a ratio of like 5 to 1, meaning that more non-clinical workers are employed instead of the clinical workers. So what the government found out that most of those lists were overblotted. And for them to just go to pay for those ones on GIFMIS, they have to investigate it. They asked us to give them 12 days which as of today is remaining 2 days left. The names of those people on gift mix have been sent to the budget office. They are verifying those names with the ones from the chief medical directors and the one from the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors. Until that is met, you expect government to want to pay the salaries yet. Remember, the strike was agreed on by the National Executive Council, which most of the local chapters are members there. But for us being leaders, we have to always balance it. We can't keep Nigerians and deny them of their health care when some institutions are being investigated. And based on the promises made to us by government, it's telling us that in the next 2 days,
right,
they would have finished investigations and payment will be agreed on.
Well, I just wanted to be clear on who...
the benefit of doubt.
Right, I just wanted to be clear on that part where you said they are angry with you for calling off or suspending the strike. I just wanted to know who actually suspended. Was it you or NEC?
Part of our
no, the question is, was it you that suspended the strike or the NEC?
Would be paid before calling off the strike.
Dr. Kwaisi, I don't know if you can hear me.
So they are telling us that we didn't follow that up.
I understand. I just want to be clear. Just a moment, Dr. Kwaisi. Just to be clear, was this decision to suspend the strike, was it taken unilaterally by you or by the National Executive Council of your body?
We had an Executive Council meeting on Saturday, which lasted for about 8 hours. And on that, it was put to vote after giving them what was brought for us on the MOA. And it was unanimously agreed that the strike should be suspended for 4 weeks.
Right. So speaking of the MOA, was any new memorandum of understanding MOA agreed upon at this latest meeting, or you still relied on the one that came out of the meeting on March the 31st?
No, and addendum was added to it because they found out that they needed some to be immediate, intermediate, and for a later date. For the immediate ones were for the payments of the house officers that are left that have not been paid, the failed transactions, those ones that had wrong account numbers, those were immediate. And that immediate was the that for the payment of the gift mix platform. Those were immediate. They were not in the former timeline. Also, for the hazard allowance, it was said that they were going to give us 5 weeks. But because of the why we stood and said we needed a better timeline, it was brought down to on Monday today and on Wednesday, on Wednesday for them everybody to meet up together. Those are things that were added to the former MOA we signed earlier.
So still a lot of areas to actually cover, just so we ensure that this is at least done and dusted with to a large extent. But we'll go to break, and when we return, we'll deal with those issues. Please stay with us. Oh, yeah, welcome back. My colleague Ayo has a question for you.
Yeah, Dr. Kwaisi, part of your demands put out when you called the strike was for the sack of the MDCN registrar. Has that been achieved?
No, the sack of the MDCN registrar have not been achieved. And I still go back to what we said earlier. If the system is not functioning well, you have to look for the primary cause and remove the primary cause. The MDCN registrar has failed in every way. He has failed in trying to register doctors. I know he does not even know the amount of doctors in Nigeria. He came on air that day and said medicines like paramilitary and their seniority. You don't ask for seniority to be able to work well. If the head is not doing his own job, he should be removed. I'll give examples for this. You have been given over 4 years to make the central placement of the house officers to work. As it stands, the central placement only accounts for those in federal hospitals. Those in state hospitals do not even have any house officer that wants to go there. That's one. Two, you were supposed to profile the house officers and give them a professional license. But as it stands, most of us registered for our license some months back, December ending, and up till now, nobody has the license. So we stated that we need him to be removed. But the government are asking that we give them time. I'm aware that the House of Rep member moved a motion, and it was agreed on by the House of Rep that the MDCN will be investigated for a 5-year period, and the investigation starts in 6 weeks' time. So we'll wait for the judgment of for them to investigate him, and they will tell the public and tell Nigerians if he really deserves to stay at his workplace or not.
Well, I expect that a representative of the MDCN was at that meeting between you and the federal government. But, you know, speaking with the MDCN registrar just last week, he spoke about the central placement which you referenced, saying that, well, it was approved by FEC years ago, but it wasn't included in the budget until 2021. Is that something you're aware of?
I think it's also his failure. Because if you are the registrar of MDCN, you should have a budget for all house officers. All over the country, we have about 3,500 house officers. And those in the federal tertiary institutions is about 2,136 from us. A budget was made for all of them, which was part of the reasons why the central placement was asked for. And if you have had the budget then was 12 billion, and you are aware that 5.7 billion was released by the federal government. If you are responsible, you should be able to know that that is going to give you some bottlenecks, and you'd have had a template to tell the government that this will not work, and factor it into the process and make the process work. So he failed, first of all, because first he had no template of long-term plan or even short-term plan for the central placement of the house officers. He had no template to show that the state and those that work in the military and paramilitary also are part of those being intern that have to go into training. He had no template of those knowing that their payments will be made. Because if he had a template then, we shouldn't be having bottlenecks on their folio number. We shouldn't be having bottlenecks on their account number. We shouldn't be having bottlenecks of them paid multiple times. Those are why I told you that he needs to be investigated, and they need to put more competent hands that can manage the system.
So just one more thing on that issue, because when we hosted the MDCN registrar, one of the things he also said was that he interfaces with your members, with resident doctors, through the chief medical directors of the various hospitals, and that if there is any lacuna, it is not from him, his office, the MDCN registrar, to the resident doctors, but through the chief medical directors. In what way would you say the chief medical directors are culpable in this matter or not?
The chief medical directors have a place and a part to play in this makeup. The chief medical directors know first that you have to have reaccreditation of your centers. That's why I made mention of the center in Abakaliki that had a quota of 12 house officers over 5 years back, and they have not gone for reaccreditation. So the question to ask is, how many of these chief medical directors have asked that the MDCN should come and reaccredit them? That is one. Two, when we compare the list we sent to, we brought to the negotiating table, we found out that for federal teaching hospitals, it was about 2,136. Why the one that came from the chief medical directors was over 4,000. So that is why when the House of Rep members said that the list was overblotted, It was indeed overblotted. Because some of the house officers have left the institution and have gone to better places. I'll give you an example. One left Lut and went to National Hospital, Abuja here. The list they were submitting still had the name of that person that worked in Lut in the same name. So the names were all in Lut and in National Hospital. Those are things that are avoidable, and those are things you need to correct. So yes, I will still blame the MDC, the chief medical directors, that most of them did not do their part. But also you need to have, in an organized system, you have to run a program. If you had 4 years since 2017 to run a program for this central policing, you should have at least had a template. You should have a computer-based structure where you can feed in any name in the system and tells you, that gives you an alert that this person has been paid before. You shouldn't be out of trying to wrong a system or make a system right and now end up paying them double salaries. And you are telling us that it's the doctors that are at fault. The doctors are not at fault at this stage. It's the MDCN, because if he did not check his system well, if he does not have a system that checks if there are multiple payments, it's a failure on his own part. So he needs to go back and do a proper template. He needs to know that there are softwares all over the world. We're not in the analog age. It's digital. You just need to write a program and tell us that if this name I've showed before, if this account number I've showed before, you prompt it and tell them they have to do a double check, which is how they have failed. And now you're telling us that the house officers have to be punished. You can't punish somebody that didn't do any crime when you did not do your own part of it at all.
Well, even though he said that there's fraud in that system, of which he cannot be blamed. But the fourth item on your resolution requests that medical training be removed from the concurrent list. That is where the National Assembly comes in, if I'm correct on that one. Can that be achieved within this 4-week window for which the strike was suspended for?
The Medical Resident Training Fund is a fund that helps to allow any resident in training to have his 2 or 4 updates, to have paid for his exam fees, to go for exams in places like in UCH and National Hospital here. Our members are made to travel all over the world in, between April and May, which they are doing now.
Can that be achieved within 4 weeks for which you suspended the strike?
It was not in the budget. It was, and we were able to achieve the part of the Resident Training Fund by the intervention of the Honorable Speaker of the House and Dr. Femi Gbajabiamila, who helped to lobby for the 4 billion naira paid that was meant to pay for the Resident Training Fund. But however, in that payment, there was an error made because the actual money budgeted for that payment was 4.4 billion naira, and 4 billion was released. That meant that over 1,300 members still have not been paid. We also noticed that based on the checks and balances that 558 people were paid in error. As of December 20th last year, we have written to the Federal Ministry of Health and the the Attorney General's office, telling them that members were paid in error, and members are willing to return the money back, and that an account number should be provided. Till this strike, some few days back, no account number was released from them. Through the intervention of the Honorable Speaker again, he has told us that those ones that were omitted from the Medical Resident Training Fund for 2020, we are going to be, the supplementary budget will be made for them and they will be paid. Through the House of Minister of the Speaker of the House also, the National Postgraduate College have been mandated to provide a list for the Medical Resident Training Fund for 2021, and so that they can effect the payments for them this by the next few months. So those are what the strike have achieved, and we hope that based on the honor we are giving the Honorable Speaker of the House, those things will be made available to all members.
Well, we are sincerely hoping that indeed that, the commitments that have been made, will it eventually be achieved, that we will be able to get by the end of today and tomorrow and Wednesday, you know, some of the timelines which you have already stated, that indeed what has been promised to be, you know, fulfilled for your members, and that the discussions on hazard allowance would also move very smoothly, and that at the end of review of 4 weeks, you will see no need to go on an indefinite strike action again. We have to say thank you for coming on Sunrise Elite this morning. Dr. Ilawa Okwayesu is the president of the National Association of Resident Doctors, and he's been speaking with us here in our Abuja studios. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll have other issues for you. Please stay tuned.